I handed my wife divorce papers on our fifth anniversary. 3 months later, I'm standing in a boardroom, staring at the mystery investor who just saved my pharmaceutical empire from collapse. She removes her sunglasses. My blood runs cold. It's her. And she's smiling like she's been expecting me. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, hit that like button if you love tales of karma and second chances. And subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Now, let me tell you about the biggest mistake of my life. My name is Nathaniel Ashford, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I inherited Ashford Pharmaceuticals from my father, a company worth $2.3 billion. I lived in a penthouse that overlooked the entire city, drove cars that cost more than most people's houses, and wore watches that could fund a small country's healthcare system. I was invited to every gala, every charity event, every place where powerful people gathered to pretend they cared about the world while sipping $1,000 champagne. And I was married to Camille. Beautiful, elegant Camille. I married her 5 years ago because she fit perfectly into my world. She looked stunning in evening gowns, knew how to smile for cameras, and never embarrassed me at social functions. She was exactly what a man in my position needed, a flawless accessory to complete the picture of success. That's how I saw her. God help me, that's actually how I saw my own wife. But our marriage was empty. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. We lived in the same penthouse but existed in different worlds. I worked late, traveled constantly, and when I was home, I barely looked at her. She would try to talk to me about her day, about ideas she had, about things she was passionate about, and I would nod absently while scrolling through my phone. I thought she was simple. I thought she lacked the depth and intellect that someone like me deserved. Everything changed 6 months ago at the annual charity masquerade ball. I was there out of obligation, bored out of my mind, when I saw her. A woman in an emerald gown and an intricate gold mask that covered half her face. Something about her pulled me across that ballroom like gravity. We started talking, and I was electrified. She challenged every opinion I had about medicine, about ethics in pharmaceuticals, about what it meant to actually help people versus just making profit. She spoke about innovative research approaches I'd never considered, about compassion in healthcare, about purpose beyond wealth. We talked for 3 hours straight. I forgot about everyone else at that party. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt truly connected to another human being. She understood the science, the business, the moral complexity of what I did. She made me think. She made me feel alive. And then at midnight, she disappeared, just vanished into the crowd. I searched everywhere, asked everyone, but no one knew who she was. I became obsessed. I hired a private investigator, spent over $200,000 trying to find her. Nothing. It was like she never existed. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. She represented everything I thought was missing in my life. Everything I convinced myself I deserved but didn't have. That's when I started to really resent Camille. Every time I looked at her, I saw everything that mystery woman wasn't. Camille seemed quiet where the masked woman was bold. She seemed simple where the mystery woman was complex. I stopped seeing Camille as a person and started seeing her as the obstacle between me and the life I was supposed to have. I became cruel. I stopped speaking to her unless absolutely necessary. When she tried to share her thoughts, I would cut her off or walk away. I made her feel invisible in her own home. And the worst part, I felt justified. I had convinced myself that I was trapped in a mediocre marriage when I deserved something extraordinary. Our fifth anniversary arrived. Camille made a reservation at the restaurant where I proposed, the one with the view of the harbor and the candlelit tables. She wore a midnight blue dress that highlighted her dark skin beautifully, and she'd done something different with her hair. She looked hopeful. She was trying, and I was about to destroy her. We sat down, ordered champagne, and before the waiter could even bring our appetizers, I slid the divorce papers across the white tablecloth. I remember exactly how the folder looked against the expensive fabric, how her hand froze halfway to her wine glass. She stared at those papers for what felt like an eternity, and when she finally looked up at me, her expression was completely unreadable. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't ask me why. She just said, very quietly, "You have no idea who I am, do you, Nathaniel?" I scoffed. I actually scoffed at her. I told her not to be dramatic, that I was offering her a very generous settlement, that she should be grateful I was being fair. She smiled then, this small, sad smile that I didn't understand, and she signed the papers right there. She stood up, placed her napkin on her chair, and walked out of that restaurant with more dignity than I'd ever possessed in my entire privileged life. I felt relieved, free. I threw myself back into searching for the mystery woman and running my company. For 2 weeks, I was convinced I'd made the right choice, and then everything fell apart. Our main research facility failed a surprise inspection, contamination in the labs. The FDA launched a full investigation. Our biggest drug trial was suspended. The news hit the market like a bomb. Our stock price dropped 30% in a single day. Investors started calling, panicking, demanding answers I didn't have. I was hemorrhaging millions of dollars daily, and every solution I tried only made things worse. Within a month, major investors were pulling out completely. The board was losing confidence in my leadership. Bankruptcy wasn't just possible, it was probable. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I sat alone in my penthouse, surrounded by all my expensive things, watching my empire crumble. The friends who used to fill my calendar suddenly stopped calling. The invitations dried up. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in my life. I kept searching for that masked woman, though, like a madman. I convinced myself that if I could just find her, everything would make sense again. She became this fantasy I clung to, while my real life disintegrated. Then the letter arrived. Plain envelope, expensive paper. Meridian Ventures, an anonymous investment group, was offering to save my company. They would inject the capital we needed, help navigate the FDA crisis, and stabilize everything. But they wanted a meeting first. I would have agreed to anything. I was desperate. The day of the meeting, I dressed in my best suit, practiced my pitch, and walked into that boardroom, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. My board members were already seated, looking nervous and hopeful. And then she walked in, tall, commanding, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Oversized sunglasses hid most of her face, and her hair was styled differently, more severe and professional. But something about her walk, the way she held herself, made my heart start pounding. She sat down at the head of the table, my table, and commanded the room without saying a word. When she finally spoke, my entire body went numb. I knew that voice. I knew it, but my brain couldn't process what it meant. She talked about the company's failures, about the path forward, about terms and conditions, and then slowly, deliberately, she removed her sunglasses. Camille. It was Camille, but not the Camille I thought I knew. This woman looked at me with the eyes of someone who owned the world, someone who held all the power and knew exactly how to use it. This was a stranger wearing my ex-wife's face. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. She smiled at my shock and introduced herself to the board. Dr. Camille Laurent, she said, founder and CEO of Meridian Ventures, PhD in biochemistry from Cambridge, holder of 17 patents in pharmaceutical research, one of the most respected names in drug development under her maiden name, a name I'd never even bothered to ask about because I'd insisted she take mine. The room was spinning. The board members were nodding, impressed, some of them already knowing her reputation. And I just sat there, my mouth open, my entire understanding of reality shattering into pieces. She laid out her terms. She would save Ashford Pharmaceuticals. She would invest the capital, fix the FDA crisis, and stabilize the company, but she would become the majority shareholder and CEO. I would be demoted to a consultant position with no real authority. I would work for her, my company, my legacy, my name on the building, and I would be answering to my ex-wife. One of the board members asked why she was interested in helping us. She looked directly at me, and her smile was sharp enough to cut. Professional curiosity, she said. I want to see if this company can actually fulfill its potential when it's run by someone who cares about medicine more than ego. After the meeting, I cornered her in the hallway. Yeah, I demanded answered. How is this possible? Why didn't she tell me? She leaned against the wall, relaxed, in control. Tell you what, Nathaniel, That I had a career, I tried. Every time I mentioned my research, you looked at your phone. Every time I wanted to discuss a medical breakthrough, you changed the subject. You never asked what I did before we married. You never asked about my education, my work, my passions. You were too busy deciding I wasn't interesting enough for you. And then she told me about the masquerade ball. That woman, the one I'd been obsessively searching for, that was her, Camille. She'd arrived at the party with me, worn one mask, then changed into another after I wandered off. She wanted to see if I would recognize her intellect, her mind, if the physical disguise was different. I'd talked to my own wife for 3 hours and never knew. I'd fallen in love with who she actually was while being married to her, never realizing they were the same person. I hoped you'd figure it out, she said softly. I gave you so many hints in that conversation. I referenced things only I would know, but you were so convinced your wife was beneath you that it never crossed your mind. You wanted to find someone worthy of you, Nathaniel. Congratulations. You found her, and you divorced her. I asked about the contamination crisis. She nodded. I knew about it 3 months ago. My contacts in the industry told me. I could have warned you, but we were already divorced, and you'd made it very clear you didn't value my opinion. It wasn't illegal. She had no obligation to help her ex-husband's company, but she'd watched me struggle, watched me fail, and done nothing. That was my karma, served cold and legal. I signed her papers. What choice did I have? And just like that, I went from billionaire CEO to glorified employee, working for the woman I'd thrown away. The next 2 months were the most humiliating of my life. Camille transformed the company with terrifying efficiency. She solved the FDA crisis in 3 weeks, something I couldn't do in 2 months. She implemented new research programs, ethical guidelines, and community health initiatives. The employees loved her. The stock price recovered. The media praised her vision. And I watched from the sidelines, fetching reports, attending meetings where I was barely acknowledged. Society watched my fall with gleeful fascination. The gossip columns had a field day. Billionaire's ex-wife revealed as secret genius, one headline read. Another said, Nathaniel Ashford's biggest loss wasn't money. People who used to fight for my attention now barely returned my calls. I'd become a cautionary tale, a punchline about male arrogance. But something unexpected happened during those humiliating months. I started actually seeing Camille, really seeing her. I noticed how she remembered every employee's name, asked about their families, celebrated their achievements. I saw her stay late to mentor young researchers, watched her patiently explain complex concepts, observed her genuine joy when a project succeeded. I read her published papers, stunning works of scientific innovation I'd never bothered to look at. I learned she'd been funding medical clinics in underserved communities for years, using her own money, never seeking credit. I remembered moments from our marriage differently now. That time she tried to discuss a new treatment approach, and I told her she wouldn't understand the business side. She'd been trying to share a breakthrough that would have made us millions. When she spent hours reading in her study, I'd assumed she was wasting time. She'd been conducting research that was now revolutionizing our field. Every conversation I dismissed, every idea I'd ignored, came back to haunt me. She'd been extraordinary all along. I'd just been too arrogant and blind to see it. I changed, losing everything, stripped away the entitled, self-important man I'd been. For the first time in my life, I had to actually earn my place through real work and merit. I started listening more than talking, learning more than assuming. I found myself genuinely admiring Camille, not for how she looked or what she represented, but for who she actually was. Her brilliant mind, her compassionate heart, her unshakable integrity. And the regret nearly destroyed me. I would lie awake at night thinking about the 5 years I'd wasted, the connection I'd thrown away, the love I'd been too stupid to recognize. I'd had everything and destroyed it with my own hands. Then the crisis hit. A rival company launched a smear campaign against Camille, publishing false data that questioned her research methods and ethical standards. They were trying to destroy her credibility, her reputation, everything she'd built. I watched her face the attacks with dignity, but I could see the toll it was taking. For the first time since the boardroom revelation, she looked vulnerable. I had a choice. I could stay silent, let her struggle the way she'd let me struggle. I could even call it karma, but that's not who I wanted to be anymore. I spent 72 hours working around the clock. I called in every favor I had left, burned bridges with old friends who were connected to the rival company, and gathered evidence proving their data was fabricated. I built an airtight case and handed it to the regulatory authorities. When the truth came out, the rival company was finished and Camille's reputation was vindicated. The media praised her integrity even more, and I made sure she got all the credit, staying completely out of the spotlight. She came to my office late one evening after everyone else had gone home. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You could have let me fall." "God knows I let you fall." I looked at her, this incredible woman I'd been lucky enough to marry and stupid enough to lose. "Because it was the right thing to do," I said, "and because I finally understand what I lost. Not the masked woman from the ball, not some fantasy, but you, Camille Bavirtom, the real you, and she's more extraordinary than I ever deserved to know." We talked that night, really talked, maybe for the first time in our entire relationship. I apologized for everything, every dismissal, every moment I made her feel less than. Every day I was too blind to see her. I didn't make excuses. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I just needed her to know that I finally understood. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't do this for revenge, Nathaniel. I did it because you needed to see me, really see me. I loved you enough to try to wake you up, even if it meant watching you hurt first." She made it clear that this didn't fix what I'd broken. The trust, the marriage, the years, those were gone. But she was willing to see who I'd become, to consider the possibility that people can change. Not as husband and wife. Those people didn't exist anymore. But as two individuals who might, maybe, eventually rebuild something real. I don't know what happens next. I work for her now, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. Every day, I try to prove that the man who handed her divorce papers is gone, replaced by someone who finally understands what it means to truly see another person. Someone who knows that love isn't about finding someone worthy of you. It's about becoming worthy of them. I lost $1 billion empire and found something more valuable. The ability to see people for who they really are. The woman I was desperately searching for was right beside me all along, and I was too blind to notice. She was my wife. She was brilliant. She was extraordinary. And I threw her away because I couldn't see past my own reflection. If this story made you think twice about the people you take for granted, hit that like button. Subscribe for more incredible stories about karma, redemption, and second chances. And drop a comment. Have you ever realized too late what someone truly meant to you? Have you ever been so focused on what you thought you wanted that you missed what you already had? Share your story. Maybe we can all learn to open our eyes before it's too late. I'll see you in the next one.